The moment everything changed, Robert Harrison adjusted his expensive watch and glanced around the small diner with barely concealed impatience. The leather seats were cracked, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of bacon grease hung heavy in the air. This wasn't the kind of place a man of his status usually visited, but his son Tommy had specifically requested they come here after his doctor's appointment. Tommy sat across from him in his wheelchair, his 12-year-old face bright with excitement despite the leg braces that would be part of his life forever. A car accident 3 years ago had changed everything for the Harrison family, though Robert often felt like he was still trying to catch up to that reality. "Dad, can we order the pancakes?" Tommy asked, his voice filled with the same enthusiasm he'd had before the accident. "Sarah says they make them shaped like Mickey Mouse here." Robert's jaw tightened slightly. Sarah was Tommy's physical therapist, and lately his son seemed to quote her more than his own father. "We'll see," Robert replied, checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Even in this modest diner, business calls couldn't wait. The lunch crowd was beginning to thin out, and Robert noticed they were one of only a few tables still occupied. He was about to suggest they order quickly when a young woman in a faded uniform approached their table. Her name tag read Grace, and despite her tired eyes, she offered them a genuine smile. "Hi there," she said, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "I'm Grace, and I'll be taking care of you today. What can I get you started with?" Tommy's face lit up. "Do you really make Mickey Mouse pancakes?" Grace laughed, a sound that was surprisingly musical in the diner's mundane atmosphere. "We sure do, and between you and me," she leaned in conspiratorially, "I make the best Mickey Mouse ears in town." As Grace took their order, Robert found himself watching her carefully. There was something about the way she interacted with Tommy, not talking down to him, not avoiding looking at his wheelchair, just treating him like any other kid excited about pancakes. When their food arrived, Robert was surprised by the artistry Grace had put into Tommy's plate. The pancakes weren't just Mickey-shaped. She'd added strawberry slices for buttons and whipped cream for gloves. It was a small gesture, but Tommy was absolutely delighted. "This is amazing!" Tommy exclaimed. Taking a picture with Robert's phone to show Sarah later, Robert was about to comment when his business phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Chun Industries, a deal he'd been working on for months. "I need to take this," he said, standing up and walking toward the diner's entrance. The call stretched longer than expected. Robert found himself pacing in the parking lot, discussing profit margins and acquisition terms while glancing occasionally through the window at Tommy. When he finally returned to their table 20 minutes later, he stopped short. Tommy was out of his wheelchair. Grace was supporting him as he stood beside their table, his legs shaking with effort but his face glowing with pride. She had one arm gently around his waist while his small hands gripped the edge of the table for balance. "Dad!" Tommy called out when he saw Robert approaching. "Look!" Grace showed me some exercises Sarah taught her. "I can stand for almost a whole minute now." Robert's throat felt tight. He'd hired the best physical therapist money could buy, had Tommy's room filled with expensive equipment, but he'd missed this moment of progress. A moment shared with a waitress in a small diner while he was on a business call. "That's wonderful, son," Robert managed, his voice hoarser than usual. Grace carefully helped Tommy back into his wheelchair, her movements practiced and confident. "Tommy's been telling me about his therapy sessions," she explained to Robert. "I actually studied physical therapy before. She paused, glancing around the diner. "Before I ended up here. I recognized some of the exercises he mentioned." Robert studied Grace more carefully. She was probably in her mid-20s, with intelligent eyes and gentle hands. There was a story there, he realized, one that had led a trained physical therapist to work in a diner. Could I speak with you for a moment?" Robert asked. Grace nodded, asking another waitress to keep an eye on Tommy while she and Robert stepped aside. "You studied physical therapy?" Robert asked directly, Grace's cheeks flushed slightly. "I graduated with my degree last year, but my mom got sick and the medical bills." She shrugged, trying to appear casual about circumstances that were clearly anything but. Insurance doesn't cover everything. This job has good tips and flexible hours so I can take care of her. Robert was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Here was a young woman with the exact qualifications his son needed, working in a diner because life had dealt her an unexpected hand. How would you feel about a different job? He asked finally. Grace looked confused. I'm sorry? Tommy needs a full-time physical therapist and companion. Someone who can work with him daily, help him with exercises, maybe even continue his education when he's not feeling up to regular school. Robert paused, watching her expression. The salary would cover your mother's medical expenses, and we have excellent health insurance. Grace stared at him, her eyes wide. Are you serious? I've never been more serious about anything, Robert replied, and realized he meant it. 3 weeks later, Robert came home from work to find Tommy and Grace in the backyard. Tommy was using his walker, taking careful steps across the grass while Grace spotted him, offering encouragement and gentle corrections to his posture. But what stopped Robert in his tracks was the sound of Tommy's laughter. It was the first time he'd heard his son laugh with such pure joy since before the accident. "Dad!" Tommy called when he spotted Robert. "Watch this." He took 10 consecutive steps, his face flushed with effort and pride. Robert felt tears pricking at his eyes. "That's incredible, Tommy." That evening, after Grace had gone home to care for her mother, Robert sat with Tommy as he got ready for bed. "Dad," Tommy said as Robert tucked him in, "I really like Grace. She makes me feel like I can do anything." "She's pretty special," Robert agreed. "You know what she told me today?" Tommy continued. "She said that sometimes the best things happen in the most ordinary places, like how we met her at that little diner." Robert smiled, thinking about how a simple lunch had changed all their lives. "She's right about that, son." As he turned off Tommy's light, Robert reflected on how wrong he'd been about so many things. Success wasn't just about the size of your bank account or the importance of your business deals. Sometimes it was about recognizing the extraordinary people hiding in ordinary places and having the wisdom to invite them into your life. Grace had given Tommy more than just physical therapy. She'd given him hope, confidence, and the belief that his limitations didn't define his possibilities. And in doing so, she'd taught Robert something invaluable about what it truly meant to be a father. The diner where they'd met was still there, still serving Mickey Mouse pancakes to excited children. But for the Harrison family, it would always be the place where everything changed, where a waitress with gentle hands and a caring heart showed them that sometimes the most life-changing moments come disguised as ordinary Tuesday afternoons.